Hello, everyone. I'm Jack Railton-Woodcock. Thank you for coming to my talk about marketing. There's a few more of you here than I was expecting. We're here to talk about marketing, right? As you can see, it's called Everything is Marketing. Alternate title, Marketing is Everything. Still haven't decided quite yet. Before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge that GCAP is being held on the lands of the Boon Wurrung and Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and I wish to acknowledge them as traditional owners of Naarm. I would also like to pay my respects to their elders past and present and Aboriginal elders of other communities who might be attending the conference today. That's me. Realise now in this moment it's probably a bit self-indulgent to put a big photo of myself up on the big screen. But here we are. So there will be time for questions at the end, but if you're keen to chat about marketing or video games or anything else really, that's what I look like. I'm also quite tall. Find me in a crowd, make me easy to spot. I'm usually pretty terrible at self-promotion, but my talk is about how everything is marketing, and there's obviously nothing us marketers enjoy more than a captive audience. So the best place to reach me is on Twitter. It's my handle, right underneath the huge picture of myself. And I'd also like to quickly check my privilege as a cishet white man. I'm going to be talking a lot about my own opinions, my own experiences in the world of marketing, which, as I'm sure you can all imagine, is a place of tremendous privilege for people like me. And also a word of warning that I'm much more comfortable in the crowd rather than up here, so if I jumble up my notes or whatever, start sweating profusely, go easy on me. So a little bit about me. I'm actually quite fresh to the video games industry. In a past life, I was a creative director at an advertising agency, and before that, I was a copywriter. So writing headlines on billboards and TV scripts and subject lines and emails and all that good stuff. These are just some of the clients that I've worked on. So Ford, Coca-Cola, Cadbury chocolate. Got a lot of free chocolate, too much maybe. So all sorts of different products with different messaging and different audiences and different approaches to marketing. So over the course of my career, I've made a few ads and campaigns that I'm really proud of, but I have been doing this for almost 10 years, so I've made a lot of very forgettable ads that no one will remember. Even me. So I work for a developer here in Melbourne called Lumi Interactive, and we're working on our first game. It's called Kinda World. So it's an evidence-based free-to-play mobile game, all about houseplants, healing, and practicing kindness. I think Kinda World is a really special project. It's not often you get to work on a project that will genuinely make the world a better place, especially when you've been flogging chocolate and cars for a decade. We're doing things quite differently from the way the game is designed to our monetization plans and even how the company itself is structured. We're still in early access, but here's a little slide on how the game itself works. So the game is kind of about taking care of virtual houseplants, but the way you do that is by taking care of yourself in the real world. So it's really quite a simple game. You can see on the left, it's just about sort of watering cute houseplants in cute pots, meeting sweet, supportive NPC characters like Sammy the Samoyed and Quilliam the Hedgehog, and also decorating your own little safe space, which is just very soothing and satisfying, especially if you're into the cluttercore aesthetic. Even though we're in early access, we've got tens of thousands of players who are active members of this kind of kind community that we're cultivating. And it includes gameplay mechanics like kind wishes, which are a bit like random acts of kindness in message form. So I don't know if you can see in that third screen, when I took that screenshot, I got a message that said, "I truly hope you'll find the perfect position to sleep in tonight," from the solitary goblin, which is very sweet, I thought. Just makes me feel all warm and fuzzy inside. But the best part, in my opinion, is that the warm and fuzzies are backed by science. So we've actually got a full-time wellbeing researcher on our team, shout out Dr. Hannah, and they work with the game designers to make sure activities like daily gratitude or emotional naming, you can see on the far right-hand side, actually serve a purpose and, yeah, actually help people. It's free to play, which I know has a reputation for some yucky monetization stuff designed to kind of get you hooked and playing the game for as long as possible, really hold you by the ankles and shake the coins out. It's actually only designed to be played for a few minutes each day, most often when our players wake up in the morning and right before they go to bed. And yeah, if you're anything like me and you've got Headspace installed on your phone, staring at you unopened in the last few months, then you're the person we've made Kinder World for, and I would encourage you to give it a try. That's Sammy and Quilliam. Quilliam's a little botanist. You can see he's got a tiny little pot plant he's looking at. This artist is Lucy Zhang, who you should also look up. She's great. So I'm here to talk about marketing. We didn't invent this structure, this split, but it's how we do our marketing efforts at Lumi. So we've got paid marketing on the one side, which is Google ads, Facebook ads, TikTok Spark ads, podcast advertising, banner ads, all that good stuff. It's 12:07 p.m. and you've probably seen hundreds of ads already today. Almost all of those would be paid ads, which means someone probably paid quite a lot of money to make sure that you saw them. Whether you remember them or not, it's a different question. On the other side is organic marketing, which is what I'm in charge of at Lumi. I like to think of it as marketing that doesn't really look like marketing. So it's things like our own social media accounts, it's in-game mechanics, like mechanics that encourage players to share with other players. It's out-of-game experiences, like activations and giveaways. It's blogs, so the content we make. And it's also doing things like speaking at GCAP. Here I am, doing my job. So my point is that paid marketing is really complicated. You kind of need to know a lot about data and trends and growth and tracking and ROI and CPA and ROAS and all sorts of acronyms, which are very important in the marketing world. But organic marketing is a little bit different. It's kind of just thinking outside the box. And yeah, what I want to say was just that nobody knows your own product better than you do, whether you're making a small indie game or you're a Twitch streamer or whatever. But I do think all you just need is a sprinkle of creativity to do some really effective, impactful marketing. And that's basically what I'm going to talk about today. So I've got 6 different examples of organic marketing to show you, which I'm hoping will get the creative juices flowing about how to market your own product, whether it's a free-to-play mobile game or, like I said, you're a Twitch streamer or whatever you're trying to market. In fact, lots of my examples that I'll show you today come from outside the games world. That's because I think it's important to kind of seek inspiration from outside the comfort zone and see what other people are doing. This is my first example, but not because it's a great organic ad. It's actually a paid ad. It's a billboard from Levi's from 1983. And it was actually the front cover of my advertising textbook in college. It's a legendary ad when they launched the first black denim range. And yeah, it's just got one of the greatest advertising headlines of all time, when the world zigs, zag. So here's some stats for you. We do love a stat in a prezzo. 10,696 games were released on Steam in 2021. And there are 24,000 different games being streamed on Twitch each week, which I had to check a few times because that seems like a really high number. But my point is that the gaming market is extremely crowded. You probably don't need me to tell you that. But it's super competitive. And I think if you want your game or channel or stream or whatever to be successful, it's important that you think about what sets you apart from the crowd, because your audience is there and they're waiting for something new and exciting to grab their attention. So how can you zig when everyone else is zagging? Which is lesson 1. Don't be a sheep. And I don't mean this in the government's controlling the weather, birds aren't real, wake up sheeple kind of way. I mean that when you see the herd going one way, if you do the same thing as your competitors, you'll just never end up in front. If you're singing the same tune as everyone else, you'll just end up as noise. You'll be one of the 100 ads you walked past this morning and immediately forgot. Okay, this is my second example, and it's a bit long-winded, so bear with me. Once upon a time, I was a junior creative at an advertising agency called McCann Melbourne, just down on St Kilda Road, nearby. Our agency had just won a new client, the University of Melbourne. Now, obviously, my creative partner, Hui, and I were pretty keen to get our teeth stuck into the big budget brand campaign that new clients often bring. But at the time, we thought we were good enough, but looking back, we weren't ready. But what we did do is we went to the client and told them that we were keen to kind of sink our teeth into any juicy marketing problems that they were facing. Thankfully, they humoured us and they told us their problem, and it was a bit of a doozy. So Each year, there are literally hundreds of groundbreaking research projects underway at the University of Melbourne. For some context, I looked it up the other day, and this is one of them that's happening right now as we speak. It's stem cell therapy for the treatment of gastrointestinal motility disorders targeting defects in neuronal wiring, which sounds important, but beyond that, I really couldn't tell you much about it. And don't get me wrong, all of these projects were incredible. Most of them would be downright life-changing to some people. The only problem was that you needed a PhD just to understand what they were talking about. So our marketing challenge was to figure out a way to get people excited about projects like this. And also our budget was $0.50. And good luck, and see you on Monday morning. So this is what we did. We translated these complicated research topics into a language that everyone could understand, which is food. The campaign was called Research You Can Eat, and it was made up of a few different activations over the years. But in the interest of time, I'll talk about 3 of them. This is the first one. Researchers at the university had discovered that rice is the staple diet for billions of people all around the world. But beyond easing hunger pains and providing carbohydrates for energy, it actually doesn't have very much nutritional value. So these researchers spent years developing a new grain of rice that was biofortified with zinc, iron, and other micronutrients. So this is Dr. Alex Johnson. He is a plant geneticist out here quite literally trying to solve world hunger. So on open day, what we did is we turned this biofortified grain into rice pudding. You can see he's eating a cup of it. And we gave it away in a pop-up kitchen called the Empty Bowl. And we sold out in like 45 minutes. Turns out people really like rice pudding. This next example is slightly different because it was actually a combination of several different research projects happening at the uni. So these projects were trying to save the lives of unborn babies from prenatal conditions like preeclampsia. And the combination of them all was going to result in an estimated 1,000 unborn babies' lives being saved. So we made 1,000 birthday cakes and threw a birthday party for all the faculty involved, as well as benefactors and media and all the important people. I don't know if you can see the birthday cakes, but they're quite a bit larger than we expected, and 1,000 birthday cakes. It's a lot of birthday cakes. I did take a few home with me. Lastly, I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with ink gin. It's like a blue gin that when you add an acid to it, it slowly changes colour. So researchers had developed a new way to analyse a person's inherent impulsiveness and using it to affect the decisions they make, perhaps to help people curb their impulse to grab unhealthy snacks from the supermarket shelves. So the cocktail was called Now or Later, an impulsive cocktail, and it would literally change colour and flavour the longer you waited, the more patient you were. Which brings me to lesson 2. Game dev is all about the ingredients. It's about getting the code together and getting the artwork in the right spot and the writing all working well and the soundtrack slapping. All that stuff is super important when it comes to making a great game. But when it comes to marketing, it's not really about the ingredients. It's more about the flavour. It's emotional. It's about how those ingredients make you feel. It's what gets people to stop and think to themselves, hey, that game sounds pretty cool. So don't talk about the zinc or the iron or the micronutrients. Talk about the rice pudding that can save world hunger. Speaking of making the world a better place, this is the next example of organic marketing. I don't know if anyone's familiar with REI Co-op. I think they're mostly in the US. They're quite similar to an Anaconda or maybe Aussie Disposals. Basically, they're all about the great outdoors. They do hiking boots and jackets and whatnot. So they did a campaign on Black Friday, which isn't really a thing yet in Australia, but it is slowly becoming a thing in Australia, unfortunately. But it's the Friday after Thanksgiving in the US. It's kind of the start of the Christmas shopping season, and for whatever reason, people just seem to lose their damn minds. So I lived in the States for a few years, and I remember this happening because stores would they would advertise they're opening at 8 a.m. on Black Friday, and then the competitors would advertise they're opening at 7 a.m. and then 6 a.m. and then midnight and then 8 p.m. the night before and stay through the night. And it had become this sort of dystopian arms race over like who could exploit their employees the hardest. So yeah, it's not great. So what REI did was they did a campaign called Opt Outside. And while every other store was opening earlier and earlier, they actually decided to just close their stores altogether and give every single one of their employees the day off, all the way from the CEO down to the people on the floor. They encouraged them to spend this extra day off in the great outdoors, because that's on brand, but I think the real genius of the campaign was how they saw what everyone else was doing and went in the complete opposite direction. They realised that nobody wins a race to the bottom, which is lesson number 3, live your brand. So what I love is that REI didn't make a big expensive TV campaign, and they didn't spend heaps of money on their marketing. They just gave everyone the day off. They're a brand that champions the great outdoors, and so that's what they did at a company level. And it's a lesson we've taken to heart at Lumi. At work, we're lucky enough to have a 4-day work week. So here in Australia, we have every Monday off. In the US, they have every Friday off, so the weeks kind of line up. It has pretty well documented benefits to mental health, well-being, productivity, but let's not forget that everything is marketing. For brands like ours, we're making a game all about well-being. It wouldn't make sense for us to treat our team any other way. The 4-day work week is also a great selling point when it comes to attracting talent in such a competitive field. And on top of that, it's an excellent employee retention strategy. I can't really imagine going back to the 5-day grind, personally. Side note, highly recommend the 4-day work week. Or come work with us. Oh, geez, we're up to this. We're up to this slide. Does everyone know who this is? Yeah, I thought you might. I had to turn on Safe Search on the work laptop for this one. Her name is Belle Delphine, and she went from a high school dropout in 2018 to earning $2 million per month on OnlyFans. I would like to caveat this by saying she did some pretty problematic things along the way, but what she's arguably best known for is this: Gamer Girl Bathwater, which frankly was a stroke of marketing genius. So when she announced that she was selling jars of her own bathwater for, quote, all the thirsty gamer boys out there, the internet basically exploded. On the one hand, people were disgusted. They thought it was ridiculous. But on the other hand, Gamer Girl Bathwater also sold out almost instantly. So she charged $30 for these jars, but it was never really about merchandise sales, in my opinion. It was kind of all about the conversation that it generated. I don't know if anyone was on Twitter during that 2-week period where that was a thing, but it was just inescapable. Everyone was talking about it. It was even on the news, which is like pretty wild to think about, like my mum sitting at home watching news being like, Gamer Girl Bathwater. Interesting. Sounds good. But it does bring me to lesson number 4, which is weird is good. I've always thought it's always better to be weird than boring. Think about what it would take to get people to talk about your product, or maybe how to engage a whole new audience. I'm not saying sell your own bathwater, don't do that. But one example we've been talking about at Lumi is we've been chatting with our players, and a whole heap of them are really into slime, like ASMR slime. So we've been talking with some creators about maybe releasing a line of slime one day. Something a bit out there, stay tuned. If you love slime, hit me up. Cool, into the next one. So I actually saw this example in the wild on the weekend. And I think it's really quite clever. There's a movie excuse me, called Smile that came out recently. I don't really know much about it other than that it's about people with creepy smiles who kill you, I think. Kind of piecing that together just from this poster alone. Anyway, they've clearly been doing a lot of paid marketing recently because, or maybe it's just targeted specifically at me because their trailer is just everywhere I look. But they've been doing this bit of organic marketing that I thought was quite cool. It'll look like this. So as far as I can tell, they paid actors to attend high-profile sporting events and just stand in the background and smile and be creepy. It's a bit of a tight crop, but you can see in the bottom left, the guy's actually standing behind home plate at a baseball game, which means he'd be on screen for hours. I don't know how long he stood there, but ages. Millions of people watch these sporting events. which makes a paid marketing campaign like a TV ad at halftime super expensive. This is clever to me because it's not overly branded. It's not obviously an ad, but I love that they're hijacking someone else's media. Relatively cheap. A ticket's much cheaper than a big brand campaign, but arguably just as effective. That person in the top right, she's not loving it quite as much as I am, but creeping people out is on brand, so it's fine by me. The lesson here is that you shouldn't expect your audience to come to you. I think in games there's quite often this feeling that if I make a great game, it'll sell itself, which I wish was true, but unfortunately we do need to think up creative ways to communicate. The most challenging part of my job is figuring out how to approach an audience in an authentic, engaging, interesting way, but the last thing I'm going to do is sit back and just hope they come to us for no reason. Got another controversial figure up next. Another problematic human. Some might argue he's a creative genius. He's also a dickhead. I do want to be absolutely clear that I don't condone the behaviour of Kanye West, just generally as a person, but also in the examples I'm going to take you through in a sec. I'm keen to talk about Kanye West as a marketer because I think there is a good lesson to be learned in there somewhere if you dig deep enough. So he pretty famously says just wild stuff on Twitter and Instagram all the time. And again, keen to stress, don't agree with the things he says or how he says them. But late last night, I started to look at Kanye through an organic marketing lens. I will admit it got a bit tinfoil hat conspiracy theory-ish, so bear with me. But I did find some interesting info about some of his more controversial moments. Let's take a look. On the 9th of February 2016, Kanye made waves around the world when he publicly supported convicted sex offender Bill Cosby, proclaiming in all caps with 10 exclamation marks that Bill Cosby innocent. 5 days later, on February 14th, he released The Life of Pablo, which immediately shot to the top of the charts. Another one, May 2nd, 2018, Kanye made headlines with just one of the worst takes of all time, when he said that African-American slavery was a choice. Also, interestingly, reported by the BBC, because that's news apparently. On June 1st, less than a month later, Kanye released his 8th studio album, Ye, which of course also immediately shot to the top of the charts. Lastly, this photo was taken yesterday. Kanye was seen wearing a White Lives Matter sweater, which is just obviously very problematic and potentially harmful for someone as influential as him to be making statements like this. But could be great news for fans of his music, because I think it might mean there's some new album coming soon. Which brings me to lesson number 6. Whether you think Kanye West is a marketing genius or just a dickhead, it's hard to argue with his ability to grab people's attention. I think this is truly the ugly side of marketing. To me, it feels almost desperate, like, I don't know if he believes the things he's saying, but or if he's just saying them to get a reaction out of people, but it just has this feeling that he'd just do anything to sell his own product. Don't do this. You don't need me to tell you not to act like Kanye West, but it is important to remember that not all publicity is equal. Oscar Wilde once said that there's only one thing in the world worse than being talked about, and that is not being talked about. And I just wholeheartedly disagree. You want to be all over the news for the right reasons. You want people to check out your game or your stream because something about it makes them feel good, not because they're outraged by something you've done. I've only got one example left. I'm flying through this prezzo. But I thought we'd end up on something a little bit more wholesome. And this is actually my last example. So you might have seen Patagonia making headlines recently. For those who don't know, Patagonia is an outdoor clothing retailer. They're massive. They've got shops all over the world. And they've been all over the news recently because of this. Patagonia's billionaire owner gives away company to fight climate crisis. It's pretty cool. To announce the initiative, the founder wrote a letter about reimagining capitalism. And it went like this. While we're doing our best to address the environmental crisis, it's not enough. We needed to find a way to put more money into fighting the crisis while keeping the company's values intact. One option was to sell Patagonia and donate all the money, but we couldn't be sure a new owner would maintain our values and keep our team of people around the world employed. Another path was to take the company public. What a disaster that would have been. Even public companies with good intentions are under too much pressure to create short-term gain at the expense of long-term vitality and responsibility. Truth be told, there were no good options available, so we created our own. Now, I used to be a copywriter by trade, and I can smell the marketing copy from a mile away. If you go to their website right now, this is what it says. Earth is now our only shareholder. Don't get me wrong, I don't want to come off as too cynical. I actually do think this is a beautiful bit of organic marketing. In some ways, it's the opposite of the Kanye West approach. It's undoubtedly a good deed done for a great cause, but yeah, make no mistake, it's great marketing as well. If Yvonne does end up donating his whole company to fight climate change, I'd expect Patagonia's stock to rise quite a bit before then. Which brings us to our last lesson, actions speak louder than words. Or as my old basketball coach, Pat Scallon, used to say, what you do speaks so loud, I cannot hear what you say. So yeah, just like REI earlier, Patagonia didn't make a big, expensive TV campaign to show off their latest line of boots. They made a statement, and hopefully they'll make a difference. Just to be slightly cynical one last time, it's important to remember that they haven't actually done anything yet. They're talking about something they will do in the future. But that said, they do have a great track record of making meaningful change. It may be marketing, but I believe them, at least. So I do acknowledge Patagonia is obviously quite a bit bigger than your average indie game dev, but it's something to keep in mind no matter what stage of development your game is at. You don't need to work in marketing to think of better ways to be doing things, and then, yeah, tell the world about them. It's nearly lunchtime, and I do want to leave some time for questions, but I do just want to talk very briefly about the future of marketing, or specifically the future of how we plan to market Kinda World. As I said before, it's a pretty unique product. Our theory is that we're not quite a cozy game like a Stardew Valley or an Animal Crossing, but we're also not really a well-being app like Headspace or Calm. We're actually something entirely different altogether, which is just the most exciting thing as a marketer. The marketing opportunity we've got is to actually create our own category of game, or app or service, whatever it ends up being, and plant our flag in it as the first of its kind. So I won't reveal all the secrets just yet. We're still working on the language and the rollout, but we've been talking about championing the category of lifestyle companion apps, and even referring to our design philosophy community features as crowd healing, which is a bit of a play on crowdfunding for health and well-being, which I really like. And yeah, that's pretty much all I've got. Thanks for hanging out. Going to leave you with a quote from Bob Thacker, who was a marketing exec from Office Max many years ago. He said that all advertising is unwanted. So if you're going to crash the party, bring some champagne with you, or in this case, maybe some rice pudding. Of course, it wouldn't be a marketing presentation without a strong call to action, so please follow me on Twitter, Jack RW, that's me. Follow Kinda World on TikTok and Instagram and everywhere you can imagine. We've got a website, we can find out more. And most importantly, I'd love if you could download Kinda World for free on the Apple Store or Google Play right now and let me know what you think. That's all I have. Thank you. I'll leave this up, leave the call to action on screen. Questions? Maybe? No pressure?
Thanks a lot for that talk. I loved all the examples. I used to study graphic design and we had so many wonderful examples like that to inspire us to create some really out-of-the-world ideas and not be ashamed of it. But now as a solo creator myself and a lot of indie games, it can be a little bit intimidating to go outside the box. Sometimes you just want to create that game or that comic, and of course you want to do some fun stuff with marketing, but it's really scary to have to feel like reinventing the wheel. Do you have any tips for, or not suggestions, but examples of how to go about it without breaking your back, essentially?
That's a good question. I mean, I think when you're trying to be a bit creative, you do have to be a bit sort of vulnerable and a bit sort of willing to try new things, but also be willing to fail. So I think the only tip I really have, and this doesn't really help with the time management, but I would encourage you to just sort of try a whole bunch of different things, like figure out what the lowest investment you have into an idea could be, and just see if people like it. Even just like have a chat with your friends about, do you think it'd be funny if we made a slime? You know what I mean? Yeah.
Hi, thanks for the talk. Games are a very digital thing, and they exist in a very digital space, and it's generally, we look at communicating through those other means, but I think so many of these great examples are bringing that into real life. And I'm just wondering, are there any ways you've seen like games, especially smaller indie games that might not have the massive budget, what are some ways that you can bring those experiences into real life a bit more?
I think it comes back to that point about figuring out who your audience is and then going to them. So, for example, obviously we've got a mobile game, so we do quite a lot of marketing on TikTok because our rationale is that people are going to be on their phones looking at TikTok. They can just sort of a few taps and they'll be on the App Store, and that'll be that. So, it kind of depends. Like, it depends what kind of game you're making and who your audience is. I'd really say I'd encourage you to sort of get to know your audience as well as you can, and then kind of figure out where they spend time, and then go and hang out with them.
Hey, thanks for your talk. So being indie and stuff like that, every now and again you see examples of times when indie games kind of have a bit of virality. They kind of catch lightning in a bottle, right? But with that kind of virality comes the point where you don't want to turn up being your own sheep. So you don't want to be like following the success you've had and then driving and pushing that thing constantly because you think that's what will maintain that kind of success with your audience, and then it can come off as a bit disingenuous, I guess. But it's like, do you have any ideas for kind of when that point should be, where if you catch that lightning per se, how you keep focusing that into your marketing without it coming off as like, okay, they've done it once, but now they're kind of pissing me off because they keep like pushing the same crap out constantly. Like, yeah, that fine line between becoming almost spammy but still trying to hold on to that thing that you might have lucked out on.
Yeah, I mean, if you do have something that goes viral, I think you certainly shouldn't just disregard it. Like it's rare and like very hard to do. So if you do have something like that goes well, then I think you should cling on to it. Yeah. You do need to realise and just sort of be honest with yourself at what point you're beating a dead horse a little bit. But yeah, I mean, there's no shame in if people like it. There's no shame in repeating yourself a few times, I think.
All right.
Hi, great talk. My question is, if you have a company who's a little bit apprehensive to get more into putting the resources to market your game efficiently and effectively, are there any suggestions you have for, helping them to realise the efficiency and effectiveness of marketing, and how to help them see the benefits of that?
It's kind of one of the tricky things about organic marketing is quite often just the nature of it makes it a bit harder to track. Like the creepy smile people, like it'd be quite hard for them to tell how many movie ticket sales they got from that. But I do think it's important to think about when you're coming up with ideas, how much of a bit of a pitch case you can make around it. Like even internally, like we've come up with ideas, but I still need to kind of look at the data and kind of figure out, and even have to make some educated guesses, like at least show that there has been some thought into how effective it'll be. But that said, you never really know how well something's going to do, so it can be a bit tricky.
Thank you for the talk. I did come in at lesson 3, but just sort of what's your thoughts when you look at something like Minecraft, where they put no advertising budget in at all, and how that basically sold over 1 million copies, and now over 1 billion, I think it is, or whatever it's up to now. But how do you think that sort of the tactic of that worked, and is that something that you think is probably reproducible in some instance, or is it kind of just a got lucky kind of thing?
I mean, yeah, they probably got a bit lucky, but it's a great game. It's a great product, but again, like, I don't think it sold itself. Like, to be honest, I'd need to do a bit of research into what they did specifically. But if you look at how many Minecraft streamers and just how much Minecraft content is getting put out there, like, there's obviously something that people really like, not just from a consumer side, but from the creator side as well. But yeah, if I could do what Minecraft did, I'd be a wealthy man. All right, I think that's everyone. Thanks for your time, folks. Thank you, slide.